Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command, World War II, World at War. It is November 1943. The Japanese have advanced deep into the heart of China. We're just undergoing a Chinese counterattack at the moment to the east of Guangzhou, which did catch us by surprise and a little bit overextended. But other than that, we've already taken two Chinese capitals. We're dealing with a British counterattack through India in the south of China. But we did just successfully take Rangoon and presumably crippled the British supply situation into China, or at least dealt it a bit of a blow with the fall of Rangoon. That's a major milestone for the Japanese military there. On the Russian front, we just commenced a bloodbath in Russia, knocking out more than 6 Soviet infantry units this turn. We finally took the city of Baku and more or less are in mopping up operations in the south of the Caucasus, while even probing into the beginnings of Iran. We have also taken the city of Vornazev, which is a national morale objective here in the center of sort of southern Russia. And overall, the situation is just, the question remains if the weather will open up for us to take the second Soviet capital at Kubazev in this year, or whether we'll have to wait till 1944 in the spring. That poses problems, though, because the Allied D-Day invasions are bound to happen soon. The British have landed in northern Norway, and they've also landed an army here in Denmark, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to mostly more or less be essentially like the commando raids, although much larger. But we don't really have a lot of forces positioned to deal with them. We have railed 2 German infantry armies to the west to hopefully deal with this landing in Denmark without having Copenhagen fall. But we'll see how things play out there. Meanwhile, in North Africa, the British have more or less retaken all of North Africa. They've taken Cairo. Almost all of Italian Libya has fallen. We've got 1 small garrison unit there, and the city of Benghazi and Tobruk still remain in our hands for the time being, probably just for 1 more turn. The Italian peninsula is wide open for attack. We've got 1 unit of any meaningful strength there. Sicily is totally open. France is very vulnerable, so we're just waiting for the Allied landings there. Argentina is fighting on the side of the Germans and are attempting to knock Brazil out of the war. They have made it to Rio de Janeiro. They've taken all the cities along the way. If the Americans land anything of substance, anything at all, really even a garrison unit, they could cut these units off or even knock Argentina out of the war if they could take Buenos Aires. But for the moment, anyway, the war in South America seems to be a bit of a sideshow for the Allies, and they don't seem to be committing forces there. And if we could take Rio de Janeiro, we could knock Brazil out of the war, so that would be a positive. And the Japanese fleet is massing near Singapore, potentially to deal with an American incursion into the Dutch East Indies. We've got 1 carrier or 1 destroyer here near the Java Sea. Whether the Americans intend to land on the island of Java is unknown to me, but we will find out soon enough as our fleets consolidate in that area. So that's the situation right now in 1943, November. It's about to be December, but to get there, we need to watch the AI take its turn. So let's go ahead and do that and move into the beginning of this episode. So you can see Soviet national morale falls with the loss of Baku. Soviet national morale falls with the loss of Vornazev. So 2 major Soviet national morale centers. Meanwhile, Burma surrenders. Japan plunders 64 MPPs, and all of these British units here are cut off in Burma, so that's good for us. Survivors from Golmund reform their units near Umrichi, so I guess the Chinese get a free rebuild of the unit that they lost there. Allied commerce raiders continue to hinder our supply lines. And the German economy continues to chug along at over 700 MPPs per turn, which is pretty substantial, although I was told by this point in the war I should have 1,000 if I want any hope to deal with the Americans. The main question is whether we can knock the Soviets out of the war in time to, get all of these masses of troops that we have positioned to deal with the inevitable D-Day landings. Meanwhile, the Soviets are railing some reinforcements to their new capital. They're reinforcing several of their units that were badly beat up. The British are issuing heavy reinforcements in China after losing pretty substantial casualties last turn. They didn't lose any units in India, the British, but they did lose some pretty heavy casualties. American destroyers are attacking a crippled submarine of ours here to the south of Guadalcanal. They finally destroyed it there. And American battleships are bombarding the Italian coast, which I think we know means an invasion of Italy is going to occur this turn. At least that's my assumption. And that's bad, because I don't want the Americans on the continent. Every goddamn Allied unit on the continent is one more unit that I have to deal with when it comes to, you know, one more unit that I have to pull away from the Russian front, which makes our offensive there that much weaker. All right, so the Americans are bombarding Java, which is also bad news. I assume that means they're going to land troops there later this turn. But we also did have our first carrier clash there off of Singapore. American carriers attacked one of our fleet carriers, did no damage, and the American carrier wing lost 4 of its 10 fighter hit points. So that's a good start to that battle. Also, the American unit used all of its movement points up, which means it's going to be firmly stuck in place. The Soviet winter is now setting in. You can see snow is on the ground. Snow is also falling. The Soviets, nonetheless, are launching counterattacks in this weather against a mechanized unit of ours and drove it further into the heartland of Russia? That's bizarre. The British unit there, which is cut off, just decided to try and attack down that rail line, which potentially deals some supply hindrances for our troops, but actually weakened itself as well in the process. I am hoping the snow stops falling and the ground just freezes. I think that gives us more... frozen ground gives our armor good maneuverability, and I think if it's not snowing, our air units can operate, and then maybe we can take the Soviet capital this turn. It'll be interesting to see if where they drove that mechanized unit away, if they position a land unit between us and their capital. If they don't, we will have 2 front hexes against their new capital. If they do, then we'll only have 1. Soviet counterattack continues here in the south near Stalingrad. Looks like these 2 units use their orders already. Meanwhile, continued Soviet infantry counterattacks north and east of Moscow, but they're not really accomplishing much. They did a little bit of damage to this one Bulgarian unit, but the Soviet units, attacking units, both lost some of their strength, while we only lost 1. Meanwhile, attacks here to the east did nothing, and we lost nothing, and they lost casualties, so that's good to see. Chinese counterattacks here in the north of China continue. It does look like they upgraded their units to level 1 equipment, which is problematic. The British armor here in Elagala is trying to maybe finish off Libyan North Africa. I'm surprised the AI has seemed pretty weak. They took Cairo and they haven't advanced beyond. There goes Sicily. Landings on Palmero and Syracuse. It'll be interesting to see if they land in southern Italy as well. But the American counterattack in Europe has begun. That mechanized unit that just got drove back was attacked by enemy air units. I'm curious what Mandalay provides in terms of Allied supply here, because these guys are cut off with no ports. Likewise, the British units in China theoretically have no supply, although Kunming and Wencao may provide that. I'm not sure. I don't really know how land supply works when you don't have, like, a capital. None of these are supply cities, though. Actually, it looks like the British might have been pulling some of their units out there. Back toward India, perhaps. So this war is getting complicated this turn, with great opportunity in Russia and yet great risk in Europe now that the invasion of Sicily has begun, and presumably in the next turn or two, if not later this turn, the invasion of Italy may begin. We have basically no troops there. We've got a couple of garrisons and 1 army in Italy. We had nothing in Sicily, and we lost that island, which is a pretty substantial economic impact for Italy. American ships moving off the coast of North Africa. I was kind of hoping the Americans wouldn't begin their counterattack until they had fully subdued North Africa, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Meanwhile, we've detected at least 3, maybe 4 American carriers and several battleships operating in the Flores Sea, with 1 American carrier way out to the west. Soviet morale is boosted by news of Allied forces in Italy. Italian national morale suffers. The Allies will start airlifting supplies to China. Great. Great. Clandestine Slovak National Council formed favoring reincorporation into Czechoslovakia. And weather. I don't think the Americans can just drive up the coast of Sicily. So intelligence in Nairobi and Delhi. Situation in Italy. Italy is in crucial condition with the Allied forces on her territory. Her national morale is fragile, and there's a danger that Mussolini will be overthrown. If this happens, we need to be ready to secure as much of the country as possible to prevent it from falling into Allied hands. Ensure German units are occupying all key strategic locations in Italy, so that should Italy surrender, the Allies will be able to retain possession of much of the country as possible. See, what I don't know is I don't think you can move there. Can we finish these guys off? What's their supply? Their supply situation is 1. You know, this situation sucks. We're going to operate this unit to Italy. We've got a German unit in Rome. We'll operate this unit to Bologna. Do we really want one in every national morale city? I mean, as long as Rome is in our hands, that's the important thing, right? Huh. Alright, I'm just not sure how many units I need to operate into Italy. I'm hoping that's enough. Curious. Alright, so they do have a garrison unit here in Tehran. Shit. Alright, so I'm going to keep those 2 armored units here in the south of Italy, or of Russia. And then we'll move... Our mechanized units are going to reinforce first. And then we're going to move them north. Actually, shit. These guys are going to fly to Baku, mainly just to keep the partisans off our back. Yeah. So that'll do for this turn. These guys are going to rail out of here as soon as this turn's over, I think. This artillery should allow us to finish up these guys, and once we finish up these guys, then they'll move south to help the guys near Tehran. Meanwhile... These guys need to reinforce. The problem is if Italy falls out of the war, that's quite a few troops as well. Alright, so... Hungary, Romania. There's no Hungarian troops around here. Alright, because there's a lot of Italian troops here on the Russian front, especially near the capital. Good news is... Bad news is I can't bomb the city of Iveshk. The good news is I can bomb the Soviet units in their new capital, because the weather has cleared enough to allow it. This guy's not dug in at all. This guy is. So we've removed all entrenchment for the Soviet unit at their new capital. Question is, who do we want to bomb? Probably the army unit in the new capital. Alright. Really? No damage? Shit. This is the winter penalty, isn't it? That we're dealing with. Our attacking units are not even remotely as efficient as they had been. So we're not going to take the capital this turn. Can we reinforce this guy up a bit? We can. So these guys aren't going to get destroyed either. Shit. Alright, so we badly weaken these guys here north. Alright, actually. No damage. Great. Alright, this unit will move here. Alright, so we at least will have better supply next turn. But if these, like, 3 units on our flank go away, we're kind of fucked. God damn it. Alright. Main goal here is just weakening these guys to limit. These are kind of spoiling attacks north of Moscow. Nice. So, badly damaged that armored unit. We're going to operate this cavalry unit maybe up here? All right, we'll see. I'm hoping the Americans delay another month for the invasion of Italy. If I can deal with these guys here first, that would really help. So we already moved our troops in the south. Alright, we'll fly him here. Move him here. So these bombers should be able to hit here next turn. Alright. These guys are at least dug in. Alright, so there's a new threat for these Soviet troops over here to worry about. Okay, we'll start to hopefully wear down Saratov a little bit. Wondering if I should have attacked just to see if we could weaken their morale a bit. The good news is if they choose to reinforce these guys, at the very least their experience is going to be shot. I'm mainly launching these strafing attacks from our fighters just as sort of to try and hurt Soviet morale. Okay. What's the Soviet strength here? They didn't strengthen at all. They're down to 62. Meanwhile, we've got a pretty sizable force here in the north. If the weather clears, I mean, it's not crazy to make a run for Perm. Problem is just, how do I figure out how to get all this cleared out? The good thing is we've got two headquarters units really far forward that should be really helping with the supply situation here for our troops. Alright, so that's the Russian front. How's the Argentine front? Alright. So we're going to start weakening these guys' fortification. They only dropped one? Damn it. I thought the garrison attack would have dropped their supply, but it doesn't look like it did. Meanwhile, these British units are without supply. So that guy's dead. That guy's dead. No. Alright, Rangoon. Actually. Alright, supply and Rangoon there. Alright, we'll move him here. So the good news is we're advancing further into Burma. I don't know what the supply situation is for any of these British units. I would imagine not good. Nice. Down one. There you go, good sirs. Let's reinforce this air unit. Bomb these guys. Bomb these guys. From long range. All right, destroy that British unit. So I don't know if this is directly the result of Burma or if this is, you know, some other factor, but we just had a lot more success this turn in China against the British than we've had to date. Nice! There's another British unit destroyed there. I don't think I want to advance him. I want to kind of be measured in our advance. Be careful with some of these units. I can't get at the frickin'... Oh, here we can. Alright, so we can get at the partisans there. There's some kind of sandstorm or something going on over here. They have a lot of fighter support, though, in this area. These Chinese units must have been drawing their supply from over here, because it doesn't look like they've got next to anything. Okay. Alright, so cramming as much supply forward as we can in China. We almost destroyed this core. We didn't quite. But hopefully their supply situation in the north is dire. Certainly feels like it should be. I am going to take the casualties on our air unit here in an effort to destroy this guy. And we succeeded. So we destroyed an army unit there. They do have a city here I'm sure they can draw supply from. They've also got a headquarter unit here. So the destruction of that unit should help. Alright, so I think that does it for... maybe not. Reinforce this garrison unit. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the destruction of these 2 units in China and then also the 2 units in Rangoon. We have detected an American carrier. So we're going to try and destroy it with our battleships first. Alright, so we just destroyed an American carrier. We're going to scout a little bit forward with our destroyer. Didn't detect anything there. So move these battleships, which already engaged forward here as we prepare for a massive aerial fight. These guys are in calm weather. Not sure how far forward my aircraft can move. Doesn't look like very far. I really don't like the idea of exposing my carriers here to... holy shit. We just drove his carrier back into cover. Into stormy weather. Did a lot of damage to it, though. Destroyed that American battleship. Nice. Drive him back. Ah! Drove him into good cover. Alright, so unfortunately, doesn't look like we're going to be able to do too much damage to the American carriers because they're all going to retreat into cloud cover. Frickin' weather is going to really help the Americans here in the South China, or in the Flores Sea. The Battle of the Flores Sea. We'll add 1 air defense here. So yeah, the Battle of the Flores Sea had a chance to be decisive. Instead, 2 American carriers were crippled but not sunk. 1 carrier was sunk. 1 battleship was sunk. So 1 carrier sunk, 1 battleship sunk, 2 carriers crippled, 1 unscathed is the current readout of the situation. Meanwhile, we're going to hold our light carrier back. We're going to reinforce it, strengthen it. We'll bring these battleships up. Our own fleet isn't in the best of shape, so there is that to deal with. But at least it's an expensive turn for the Americans. Meanwhile, the troops in Guadalcanal at least are left somewhat unmolested. An opportunity lost, it feels like. Nonetheless, relatively successful turn. Some pretty successful results against the British and China. Some minor successes against the Chinese and northern China. On the Russian front, a little bit of frustration, I think. We couldn't take the new Soviet capital. We did do some damage to the units there. We got units into strong positions for following up any attacks next turn. Actually, let's take a look at this. Soviet units are at 62, but what's the morale look like for the Soviets following the loss of their 2? So their morale dropped to nearly 50 before the invasion of Italy, which bumped it back up to 60. British morale continues to drop. The Americans, interestingly enough, their morale's not super high. Italy's morale plummeted with the fall of Sicily. They're at 47. I don't know what the surrender threshold is, but that's not encouraging. Japan 105. Germany 106. China is at 43. Why is Poland still on here? The other low countries don't, like the other minor allied countries don't have national morale monitors like this. Anyway. All right, so I think that's going to do it, guys. We'll have to see what the weather holds. I guess I was wrong about the freezing bringing better attacks. It clearly did not. It made things more difficult. So we'll have to see if we're able to kind of keep the pressure up next turn and maybe take the new Soviet capital. You know, maybe if they keep this 1 unit here and reinforce it 7 times, its experience level is going to drop 70%, and maybe that'll let us take it. The flip side is the Americans could land on the Italian peninsula, knock Italy out of the war, and then we might lose our entire left flank down here, or right flank down here, would just vanish if Italy surrenders. So it's not too encouraging, but we'll have to see how things play out. Until next time, however, also we'd lose several of our rear units that are keeping Soviet partisans at bay. We'd lose, we'd lose most of our Greek partisan suppressors as well. So we'll have to see how things play out, guys. It's kind of a doozy. I mean, if we can take this city here before the Italians fall, then the loss of 4 units on the Russian front will be less of an issue. And maybe if we can get good weather, if we can have them hang out for another couple months, maybe we can even drive on Perm and take Perm in the next turn or 2. We'll have to see. But that will be a time for another episode. That's going to do it for this one. Until next time, guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.